A year ago, the World Trade Organization predicted 5% growth in global trade in 2022. In April, this figure fell to 3%. The forecast for the next year is a growth of only 1%. One of the main reasons is the severe economic turmoil. Ukraine was not able to fully export its traditional goods this year, in particular due to the full-scale Russia's invasion.
Ukraine has been the world's leading exporter of sunflower oil for many years. It is the fifth or sixth exporter of grains in the world. If we look at the price of these soft wheat varieties in January 2022, it was $325. In April, we saw the price rise sharply to $446. A sharp surge in prices leads to food becoming less accessible to the world.
The absence of Ukrainian goods on the world market has led not only to rising prices, but to a food crisis in the world.
We have to understand that it's not the sanctions imposed by the European Union, by NATO allies, by the United States that has caused a spike in energy and food prices. What has caused this food and energy crisis is the war itself. And that's a deliberate war by President Putin. He has deliberately weaponized energy and food in this attempt to take control over Ukraine. Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO, during communication with the participants of the UN International Climate Summit.
In turn, Ukraine is doing everything to find a way out of this crisis. This year, Ukrainian farmers actually had to fight for the harvest. Sowing and then the harvesting of grain took place under Russian shelling at the risk of life. Russia set fire to and mined Ukrainian fields, and yet the crop is harvested. And thanks to the grain agreement, it is partially sold.
This gave greater confidence to the world in the predictability of this grain market. That is, it will still appear on international markets, that there will be no shortage of it. Respectively, prices went down. If we talk about hard wheat in January, the price was $335. In May, prices rose to $523 per metric ton. The price was $430 in October.
Ukraine continues to provide food supplies to the world market, despite the constant obstacles that Russia creates.
During this war, even if our logistics are seriously disrupted, or there are problems, for example in the energy sector due to constant shelling from Russia, nevertheless we ensure uninterrupted supplies. The Russian authorities are interfering in a very primitive way. They are constantly trying to delay these checks of the ships as much as possible, so that a certain queue of them is created there, so that there are companies simply give up and do not export food from Ukraine.
Each ship that comes with Ukrainian food, according to the grain agreement, is checked. During Russia's short-term withdrawal from the treaty, Turkey and the UN could conduct 40 inspections per day. When Russia returned, the number of checks was reduced to 12. Nevertheless, during the entire time of the deal, Ukraine was able to supply more than 10 million tons of its goods to foreign markets.
Despite these risks, companies still continue to launch these convoys that go to Ukraine, take away food supplies and export them to other countries. Again, this may be the countries of Europe, which Russia has repeatedly said, but it forgets that these countries also have issues with food security and they also need to eat something, or it could be African countries.
Ukraine wants to continue the grain treaty and expand it to include more goods and ports from which ships leave. In particular, they plan to unblock ports in the Mykolaiv region. The UN World Food Programme says that due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and as a result a sharp increase in food, fuel and fertilizer prices, 70 million people in the world could die of starvation. Reported by Dana Kolesnik, Angelika Brushnevska, UATV News.